Jose Siri has a fractured tibia and could be out for the year for the New York Mets. What will they do in center field in his absence? I'll talk about that and another Mets victory on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Well, the Mets got some unfortunate news after their victory on Monday night. I will talk about the win in the next segment, but we got to focus on this news first because it is a big one. Jose Siri will be heading to the IL. The MRI that he got, I guess, during or before the game indicated that he has a fractured tibia. Now, the Mets haven't put any timetable on his return yet, but if you Google how long does it take for a fractured tibia to heal, the expected timeline is 4 to 6 months. So even if Siri is the fast healer that he said he was to the media after the game, you're still thinking 4 months is the best case scenario. So best case, you get him after the trade deadline. The New York Mets now have to plan this season out like they are not going to see Jose Siri on the field again. That's where they're at. Now, hopefully that changes and he can make an impact down the stretch. But right now, you have Tyrone Taylor on an island in center field, and there is not any great alternatives except for one. But I want to run through the bad options first. Who's going to come up? Jose Azucar or Gilberto Celestino. These are 4A players, if that. They're not going to be impact players in center field. They might hold a roster spot until a Jeff McNeil returns, and maybe even beyond that if the Mets decide to banish Brett Baty at that point. We'll talk about that a little more in the final segment when we get into our latest update on Jeff McNeil's rehab. But that's just placeholders, right? When it comes to Azucar and Celestino. These are not guys that are going to start in center field. If those guys are on the roster, Tyrone Taylor is an everyday center fielder. I see fans saying, oh, Drew Gilbert, it's his time. And that's because Drew Gilbert has been circulating a little bit on social media because he's hitting the ball really hard right now. But he's doing it with the St. Lucie Mets. He's playing in low A because he's still rehabbing from the hamstring issues that kept him out of all but 56 games in Syracuse last season. And he has yet to play a game in Syracuse this season. If Drew Gilbert was not crushing the baseball against teenagers and guys in their early 20s in low A, I would be very concerned. He needs to get back up to Syracuse and play for at least a month before you can even consider Drew Gilbert as the answer in center field. The other top prospects who could factor into center field this season, Nick Morabito and Jet Williams, are playing in Double-A, and neither has gotten much exposure to the upper levels in the minor leagues, despite the fact that Jet Williams made it up to Double-A at the end of the 2023 season. It was just basically for the playoffs in Double-A, and then he missed pretty much all of last year with the wrist. So Jet still needs time, even if he is eventually the center fielder of the Mets this season. So as you cross off all the different options, it all leads to one person, and that's Luisangel Acuña. Again, Tyrone Taylor is going to play, no doubt about that. But Tyrone Taylor is a .239 career hitter, .292 career on base, .431 slug, .723 OPS. Last year, he had just 7 home runs and a .700 OPS. This year, he's hitting .158, .179 on base, .211 slug. He has a .390 OPS. What's Brett Baty's OPS? Let me look it up real quick. Because Brett Baty is getting killed, and rightfully so, because he's looked like a disaster at the plate. And I will say Tyrone Taylor has been hitting the ball hard. He's hit into some bad luck. But Brett Baty has a .361 OPS, and Tyrone Taylor has a .390 OPS. It just shows you that Tyrone Taylor has not been an impact bat at all this season, and he likely won't be. Now, he's going to be a great defensive center fielder. And right now, at this very moment, because of Baty's struggles, the Mets' best bet is likely to just keep starting Acuña at second base and have Tyrone Taylor start in center field. But at some point in the not too distant future, Jeff McNeil is going to come back. and he's going to eat into a lot of Acuña's playing time at second base. If there wasn't this news today and Jose Siri was still just day-to-day, I'd probably be talking about Acuña as the guy that has to start at second right now, because what he's shown us over the last 5 games is a better approach. It seems like he has made some changes. He's being a little more selective. He's identifying pitches in the zone. He's swinging at those pitches, and he's laying off pitches outside of the zone. Didn't draw a walk until his last 5 games and has now drawn 3 walks over his last 5. Pretty good. He also has a 4-game hitting streak. It's 4 games, but 2 of those games have been multi-hit efforts. On Friday, he went 2 for 4 with a double, a run scored, and a walk. Today, 2 for 3 with a double, a walk, 2 runs scored. First time up, he draws a walk, steals second base, and then eventually scores on a 2-out hit by Pete Alonso. Next at bat, he inside outs one for a double down the right field line. Standing there with the chance to score, and the Mets top of the lineup just can't get the job done. Next time up, he lays down a bunt for a hit to lead off an inning. Great bunt. Pitcher tries to make a throw, rushed, bad throw. Acuña ends up on second base. And then eventually Juan Soto hits a massive 405-foot home run that he desperately needed, and that was the end of the day for the Mets offense. They score 5 runs. Acuña in the middle of 2 of the 3 rallies that scored runs. So what he can do for this team offensively, he is really sort of the perfect 9-hole hitter, where he's not going to be getting on base at a 360 clip. But even if he gets on base at a 310 clip out of the 9-hole, when he gets on base, he is a threat to score. He can score from first on any double. He can score from second on any base hit. He can steal bases. He's leading the team with 4 stolen bases. Again, 3 stolen bases in the last 4 games. He can bring you the one component that Jose Siri was bringing you, which is electric base running. Now, why play him in center field when he hasn't got a lot of exposure there? He did play 31 games in center field last year in Syracuse. And the feedback was pretty good that he can handle center field in a utility role. Well, that's where he's at right now. He's in a utility role up in the big leagues, and an injury opened up playing time in center field. This could be Acuña's future for the next 6 years for the Mets, where he starts the season, you don't really know where he's going to play, and then all of a sudden an injury pops up. All right, well, now he's your center fielder. That's what he could be. And when it comes to defense in center field, I know that some people are going to be like, oh, man, if he hasn't played anything more than 36 games overall in his minor league career in center field, how can he just jump into big league action? Jackson Merrill last year for the Padres played 5 games prior to spring training in the outfield, 5 games in left. His path to the big leagues in spring was win the starting center fielder job, and he did that. He could have been the rookie of the year. Paul Skeens won it, but you absolutely could have made the case for Jackson Merrill. He had a rookie of the year type season. Now, he was great offensively. Acuña's not that with the bat. But he was also a great defensive center fielder, learning the position basically on the fly. What does Jackson Merrill and Luisangel Acuña have in common? They're both shortstops by trade, naturally. If you have a shortstop who has good instincts, who has enough athleticism to run down those fly balls in center field, they can make that transition a lot easier than you would expect. It actually would be harder to stick Acuña into left field or right field because those are tougher reads for an outfielder. The ball gets on you quicker. In center field, you have the perfect line of sight, and you just have to get that good first jump. And even if he doesn't at times, he'll have the athleticism to catch up to baseballs and make plays. And you always can do what any team will with a 4th outfielder that's good defensively. Late in games, you can sub Tyrone Taylor in there in center. But if I'm looking for the guy over the next 3 months that could potentially give the Mets some upside at the center field position, it's Luisangel Acuña. And there's nobody else in sight until Drew Gilbert again gets up to AAA and shows you something for at least a month. Once that happens, you might have exhausted some opportunities for Acuña, and if he's not getting the job done, then maybe you do make a switch. Maybe at that point, he goes down, and you never know. Drew Gilbert and Ronnie Mauricio could come up because Mauricio is now starting an extended spring training. He's going to be DHing, I think, tomorrow or today as you're listening to this. And so his path to return to the field is finally happening, but even he needs time, and he's not an outfielder. Yes, he's a former shortstop, but he's nowhere near the athlete when it comes to a speed perspective that Acuña is. He doesn't have that lightning quick first step. So again, it's all to be determined how this works itself out. But if it's up to me, I would not be playing Tyrone Taylor every day in center field, especially because the last thing you want, and here's the thing, I was campaigning for Acuna to get time in center field before Siri went out because you didn't have a good bat in center field anyway. And I just think that Acuna needs to be on this team right now because he is a much better complement to Jeff McNeil at second base. He's right-handed. He looks the part of a big leaguer a lot more frequently right now than Brett Beatty does. He doesn't look scared in the box. He doesn't look like he's playing some type of a mental game of chess. He just looks like he's going out there and playing ball. And so this team needs Acuna. There's no doubt about that. But you don't want to have a 23-year-old who could be an above-average regular for you at some point withering away on the bench. And when Jeff McNeil comes back, he should be in the lineup nearly every day until he proves otherwise, because he's going to give you as professional of an at-bat as you're going to find when it's in competition with guys like Beatty, Acuna, Tyrone Taylor, whatever it is. If you're just talking about guys in the bottom of the batting order, like McNeil is going to be a better option than a lot of the people that the Mets could put into the lineup. But you could have both McNeil and Acuna in the lineup when that time comes. But right now, I'm sure you'll still see Acuna playing second more than center, and Tyrone Taylor is just going to be getting a lot of run. But at some point, and what I hope is the not too distant future, the Mets will realize that Acuna might just be their best bet in center field, at least for this stage of the season, until one of the prospects works their way into the picture. That's the guy I'd be going with. Last 4 games, he's scored 6 runs. I just think he's the type of guy that can be a real difference maker in the 9-hole, and he's the only guy who I can say that about right now that's on this roster. So we'll see what the Mets do with Acuna, but I think that is the best way to overcome this loss of Jose Siri. But with all that said, we have a Mets victory that I've yet to talk about. Clay Holmes had a really nice start. I want to get into that a little bit in the next segment. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props from 3-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 bonus today. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We are within 100 subscribers from our next goal of 13,000. I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Now, I mentioned some bits and pieces of the Mets offense in this game tonight in the last segment, Acuna being a big part of 2 of those 3 rallies. The first one, again, draws a walk, steals second. Lindor and Soto fail to get him in, but Pete Alonso gets the job done with a 2-out single in the third. Then he scores in the 7th on the 2-run homer off the bat of Juan Soto. In the middle, in the 6th inning, Pete Alonso had a leadoff single. Brandon Nimmo struck out, but then Mark Vientos drove one into right center field that scored Pete. He ends up on second base, and the ball ends up hitting him in the backside. Kind of a weird play. I think it was Willie Castro. I guess he realized that there was going to be no play home for Pete Alonso, and so he started to throw it to second base, but there was no one there, and so he just kind of soft tossed one into Vientos. Really weird moment. Vientos would later score on a throwing error as Luis Torrens had a comebacker and the pitcher just airmailed it, and that allowed Vientos to score. So that's how the Mets scored their 5 runs. Not a great game offensively overall. 7 hits by the Mets, but a few errors from the Twins certainly helped their cause. And Pete Alonso had another great day at the plate, 2 for 2 with an RBI, a run scored, and 2 walks. Juan Soto honestly did not have a great day at the plate, but he salvaged it with the late home run. He struck out in the first inning after Francisco Lindor hit a leadoff double, grounded out with Acuna standing on second base in the 3rd inning, popped out in the 5th inning with Acuna standing on second base, was 1 for 4 on the day overall, but that one was a massive home run that was put on a tee for him, but hey, you still got to hit him out. Hopefully that is a home run that could spark Juan Soto a little bit. I might talk about his struggles at some point this week because obviously they aren't pronounced for a normal player, but for a guy like Soto, it's clear that he is not hot right now. He is not feeling like himself in the box. With that said, he still has an 829 OPS, and I'm just so confident that a hot streak is coming. This is a guy that has been a slow starter at times in the past. Last year, I don't believe he was with the Yankees, but still, I'm far from concerned about Juan Soto, and the home run was definitely a welcome sight, and hopefully that can spark him to feel good in the box and get a little bit hot moving forward. But let's talk about the guy that was kind of the quiet MVP of the game, which is Clay Holmes, who had a really nice start. I thought it was his best start all year. Strikes out the side in the first inning and set the tone. Geez, that sounded like I said toad there, didn't it? Maybe not, but struck out the side in the first. Added 2 more strikeouts in the second in an inning where he allowed a 2-out single, but that's it. Third inning, 1-2-3 frame, picked up another strikeout. Fourth inning, gave up a triple with 2 outs, but then he got a soft liner to Francisco Lindor to get out of that jam. Through 4 innings pitched, Holmes was at 62 pitches. He had allowed 2 hits, no walks, and struck out 7. He was absolutely dominant through those first 4 innings. 5th inning came, and Clay Holmes lost it. Leadoff walk, hits a batter, then he issues another walk. So self-inflicted, bases-loaded situation with nobody out. He gets a fly ball that resulted in a sac fly, but it was a huge moment for him because he was able to clear third base. Nimmo kept the runners at first and second, a little bit of breathing room. He gets a ground ball. Mark Vientos fields it, able to tag third base to get the force out there. Can't throw the runner out at first base, but still, you're at 2 outs, runners at first and second. Byron Buxton coming up. And Clay Holmes got a big strikeout, and he got that strikeout with the kick change, which was a real weapon for him in this start. He used it 24% of the time. He was really just working the bottom of the zone and just below the zone with his sinker and his changeup and just getting a lot of swing and miss. Got 6 whiffs on 15 swings with the kick change, 5 whiffs on 15 swings against the sinker. So really was able to use that as a swing and miss pitch for a strikeout, both of those offerings. Didn't really even need necessarily to mix in the slider and the sweeper and the four seam and all those other pitches that he has, but he did mix them in and just overall looked to be in complete command until he wasn't. And then the fact that he was able to pitch himself out of that jam is the reason the Mets were able to win this game. So overall, really nice outing for Clay Holmes. We've yet to see him do it for 6 full innings and really look like a starting pitcher that, can dominate a start and get you deep into a game. But he could be the best 5-and-dive guy in baseball this year, depending on how things continue to go. And when you just think about value, how many weeks would it have taken for Clay Holmes to get to nearly 20 innings pitched out of the bullpen? It would have taken a fair amount of time. He's at 19 2/3 innings pitched through 4 starts, so he's averaging about 5 innings per start. 28 strikeouts in those 19 2/3. So the stuff is still there. I talked about Kodai Senga on yesterday's show, and I said that Senga was the one guy that really had well above average stuff in this rotation. Clay Holmes is sort of on that same line. I wouldn't say he's quite as nasty as Senga is, but he also has really good stuff. Tyler McGill has really good stuff as well. But it's still about the pitchability and then just learning how to be a starting pitcher again for Clay Holmes. For Tyler McGill, it's that same thing. It's the pitchability and getting deep into games. David Peterson does not have the best stuff in this staff, but at times he might look like the best pitcher on this staff because of the way he commands the zone, attacks, knows different situations, controls the running game, all these different things that make him a really good starting pitcher. Griffin Canning also more of a pitchability guy than a pure stuff guy. Clay Holmes has the stuff, and it was really impressive to see what he did in this start. And I think we're just sort of waiting on that start where he is really electric, where Clay Holmes might put up 6 shutout innings, or maybe he pitches even deeper than that because he gets some early outs with the sinker and is able to turn a lineup over multiple times through. It feels like he's knocking on the door of having that big start. Maybe it comes his next time out. The bullpen was great once again. Not much to say there. Huascar Brazoban got 6 outs, erased the lone base runner that he allowed with a double play ball. It was 1 walk. That was it in 2 innings pitched. Reed Garrett, Ryan Stanek, they each picked up 2 strikeouts in scoreless innings of work. So a really good day for the Mets bullpen, which sets them up well for the rest of this series. What I want to talk about in the next segment is some rehab updates. So I'll give you some updates on some of the Mets injured players. Then I will do a little bit of a prospect report. I want to tell you about some of the guys that have been hot, some of the guys that have not been hot so far to start the season across some of the Mets affiliates for their top prospects. We'll get to all of that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball and hockey playoffs are heating up. There's no better way to turn your sports knowledge into real rewards than with Prize Picks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. You can even combine players across sports, basketball, hockey, baseball. They're all going on right now. You can combine them into one lineup for your chance to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Here's what I'm picking today. I'm focusing on this Mets game. Mark Vientos, his hits, runs, and RBIs at 0.5. I'm taking more. I think he's going to get a hit. If he doesn't get a hit, I think he's going to score a run, or he might get a sac fly. He's going to do something positive offensively. I think he's about to turn the corner. On the other side of the coin, Bailey Ober is starting for the Twins. His pitching outs is projected at 16.5. I'm taking less on that because I don't think that he's going to pitch past the 5th inning. So if you like that as your lineup, feel free to follow along. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets Insider. This is our texting service. We get updates from anytime news breaks on the Mets. Like when Jose Siri's news was announced tonight, the first place I went was to subtext to let the insiders know. You can also ask me questions anytime, take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways, and get the lineup graphics sent to your phone each day so it knows the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets Insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so let's go through some injury updates. Sean Manaea got a clean MRI. He has resumed light throwing up to 60 feet, but the Mets are going to take it very slow in his ramp up. They don't want to see him injure that oblique again, so they're going to stay at that distance and intensity for 10 days to play it safe, and then he's going to start his throwing program. So let's just say best case scenario, we'll call it, I'm just going to say April 28th, he starts his 6-week program to get back to the Mets. That'd be even more than 10 days. That'd be pretty much 2 weeks instead of 10 days, right? If he starts on the 28th, 6 weeks would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're talking about maybe middle of June, a return for Sean Manaea. But you know what? That would still be welcomed at that point. It's going to take some time, but at least he is on the road to recovery. Now, Jeff McNeil is going to stay in Port St. Lucie, so he is not going to be fast-tracked to Syracuse like I thought he might be. The Mets are going to keep him in St. Lucie. He's going to play on Tuesday, off day Wednesday. He'll play Thursday. If all goes well, I guess it'd be maybe off day on Friday, and then you see him up in Syracuse over the weekend, and then it's just a matter of getting him at bats, seeing him maybe start back-to-back games. Once he continues to check off those boxes, he can eventually get that call back into the lineup, but good chance that's not going to happen, I would think, for at least this week. You're not going to see McNeil, and you might not see him next week either, or at least maybe not early in the week. Maybe he joins the Mets on their next road trip. Obviously not this one, and they have the homestand where it's the Cardinals and the Phillies. I'm trying to see where they go from there. April of 2024. That's not the right year. Let's go to 25. Yeah, off day next Thursday, not this week, but the following, and then they go to Washington. So maybe that's where we see Jeff McNeil at the end of April playing in that series in Washington, or maybe he can get back for the Phillies series. We'll have to wait and see. Francisco Alvarez was going to start his rehab in Syracuse, or move his rehab from St. Lucie to Syracuse, but the weather's really bad there this week, so he is going to start in Binghamton instead, or I guess in Reading, I believe is what Mendoza said. So I guess that's where the Binghamton Rumble Ponies are right now. Alvarez has already caught a full game. He's got to catch back-to-backs and has to get some more at-bats overall to just show that he is ready to hit. But once he is, the Mets might be able to bring their catcher back. Again, probably a similar timeline to Jeff McNeil. Maybe he is a little bit ahead. Let's talk some prospects, though. I want to run through some of the top prospects in this system. First thing, some news. So Ronnie Mauricio, as I mentioned in the first segment, he's going to be DHing in extended spring training, and they'll have him play games in extended spring training in the field. And once all those boxes are checked, eventually, I'm sure he'll get assigned to Syracuse, and we'll see what he does. But he is obviously an option at some point to be a utility infielder on this team. Jesus Baez got a promotion from low A to high A. I was a little surprised when Baez started the season in low A. Maybe that was just some extended spring for him. This is a guy that tore his meniscus last year, so maybe they just wanted to keep him around more team officials in St. Lucie to make sure that he was good to go and the knee was fine before they sent him back to where he ended last year in high A. Hasn't done much in 6 games. He's hitting .217 in Port St. Lucie, but this is more about putting him back to the level that he ended last year on, which is where I expect him to start the season. Again, my guess now is they were just keeping an eye on that knee. The guy who's really been crushing it in St. Lucie is AJ Ewing, who is now playing center field. He was primarily a second baseman last year, but they got him in center field, and he is off to a fast start. He's hitting .448, .514 on base, .690 slug for an OPS well over 1,000. He is 1 off the league lead in RBIs, has 11 to start the year. He has 2 doubles, 1 triple, and 1 home run already. So he has really been great for the Mets. And AJ Ewing's claim to fame, as I always like to mention, he was the prospect the Mets got with their comp pick for Jacob deGrom signing with the Rangers. So we'll see if Ewing can sort of extend deGrom's legacy. He's very similar to how Carlos Beltran turned into Francisco Lindor through a series of events, because Beltran turned into Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler turned into, I believe, Isaiah Green as a comp pick. Isaiah Green was in the Francisco Lindor trade. So how about that? Another guy to mention from St. Lucie that a lot of people are interested in, Matt Allen, has made 2 starts, 8 strikeouts, 1 walk, allowed 4 hits, no runs in 6 1/3 innings pitched. So he's been very good to start his season. Moving out to Brooklyn, a guy that has been a standout arm for the Cyclones is Zach Thornton, left-handed pitcher, 5th-round pick in 2023. He's made 2 starts, no runs allowed in 10 innings pitched, 14 strikeouts, 4 hits allowed, 2 walks. He's been very good. On the hitting side of things, Christopher Suero has been the real star, hitting .345, .406 on base, .828 slug, 3 home runs, and 5 doubles already. Christopher Suero was the guy that I included in the Mets' top 5 catching prospects, a podcast I did this offseason. Probably the guy with the least notoriety to his name, but you're seeing what he could do offensively. Really great start to the season. Great athlete. This is a guy that used to be an outfielder, still does play some outfield along with catching and first base. So he could be a really interesting piece if he keeps that positional flexibility. Very similar to, I always forget the guy's name, the dude for the Guardians, David Fry last year, who played some outfield, caught some. That could be the type of flexibility for a roster Suero could provide. And also, if he keeps this up, he's going to be earning a promotion at some point, because he did get a fair bit of action in Brooklyn last season. So I would not be surprised at all if he ended up in Double-A at some point in May, potentially. Honestly, if he keeps hitting like this, you never know. Other guys to mention in that lineup, which is probably the best lineup that the Mets have in their farm system right now, is the collection of bats they have in Brooklyn, especially now that Jesus Baez joins the fold. They have Eli Serrano, who was their 4th-round pick last year, big lanky guy, was a 2-way player. Now he's just focused on hitting. He's added some muscle, and he has a couple home runs to show for it. He's getting on base at a .457 clip. He's got an OPS over 1,000, just like Suero does, but Suero is actually over 1,200 right now. It's insane. Carson Bench, the Mets' 1st-round pick from last year, getting on base at a .480 clip, only has 1 extra base hit so far, has not impacted the baseball too much, but he's shown a great approach in the box. Jacob Reimer has had a nice start to the season as well. He has an .803 OPS and 8 RBIs to start his year. Double-A, Nick LaRusso is leading the team with 1 home run and 4 doubles, has a .632 slugging percentage, .895 OPS. He's really been the one prospect that has hit in Double-A so far. Jet Williams, a rough start, 6 for 25, hitting .240, 2 walks to 7 strikeouts. He does have a homer and 2 doubles, but still hasn't really gotten going just yet. Ryan Clifford and Nick Morabito, both really struggling. Morabito has 5 stolen bases on as many attempts. The crazy thing is he's only been on base 6 times. So he's showing you his one great skill, but he has struggled to get on base and to hit for the same average that we've seen him hit for in the past. Granted, it's a new level. Obviously, some growing pains. It's not a new level for Ryan Clifford, and he is struggling, hitting 150 so far. Has gotten on base at a decent clip, is close to 350, but has yet to show that slug, has not homered yet. So we'll see if Clifford can get it going maybe as the temperatures rise a little bit. Kevin Parada still can't hit. Just a little note there. 5 games played. That's it. Small sample size for him, but still not doing much offensively. On the pitching side of things, Jack Wenninger has been a real surprise. Was good at points last season. I think it was particularly better in high A than low A. Kind of got a shocking assignment, or maybe a surprising, not a shock, to put him right in double A. But man, he has shown that he is ready for it because he's only given up 4 hits, 1 run on a solo homer, 3 walks in 10 innings pitched, 16 strikeouts in 10 innings for Jack Wenninger. This is a guy that might be flying on prospect list this year. Noah McLean has been very good as well. 14 strikeouts and 9 innings pitched, allowed just 1 earned run. Not much to talk about in Syracuse. Brandon Sproat, we have spent plenty of time on, coming off his best start of the season. I think it was 4 1/3, and maybe he allowed 1 run. Don't quote me on that. And he struck out 6, but his ERA is still over 5. Blade Tidwell has an ERA over 6. Even Daniel Nunez has an ERA over 5 right now. So Syracuse is just not having a great start to their season. There's not really any prospects on the hitting side of things that we can sink our teeth into. Joey Meneses is tearing the cover off the ball, but I don't think that that's going to have the Mets calling him up to back up Pete Alonso anytime soon. Game 2 tonight, Mets versus Twins in this 3-game set played in frigid Minnesota. Man, Juan Soto and others looked absolutely miserable out there. It is the most ridiculous thing in the world that they built a new ballpark in Minnesota. How many years ago was that? Twins ballpark. 2010. 15 years ago, but still, that they actually built a complete open-air ballpark in Minnesota is insane. Just imagine if they ever were going on a deep playoff run, how miserable that would be. But regardless, cold night on Monday. It's going to be a cold night again on Tuesday, and then a day game on Wednesday. Game 2 is going to be Tyler McGill versus Bailey Ober. We'll see if McGill can pitch deep into this one. I talked about this on yesterday's show, but I really think the Mets are in a position right now where if everything lines up the way they'd like it to, they will not have to use Max Kranick in this series. And if that's the case, Max Kranick can be their spot starter on Thursday. They don't have to make another roster move. They don't have to DFA a Danny Young, send somebody down. They can go with Max Kranick, and maybe he can get them through the first 3 innings of the game. Huascar Brazoban just pitched, so maybe he'd be going on 2 days rest. You can maybe have those 2 guys basically be your starting pitcher on Thursday, and then just trust the rest of your bullpen. That is the best way to go about it, as I talked about again on yesterday's show, because there's not a lot of good options in Syracuse. So I think that is the little secret plan the Mets are hoping to enact. If you have a guy that makes a short start, that's going to go out the window because you're going to need to use all of your arms to just get through this series. But the Twins are not swinging the bat well. It's hard to hit in the cold anyway. Sometimes it's hard to pitch in the cold, but it's also hard to hit. It's just hard to play in the cold. Hopefully Tyler McGill is on, and then hopefully Griffin Canning's on Wednesday. And if those guys can eat up some innings, maybe, just maybe, the Mets can avoid making any moves, and they can just rely on a bullpen game on Thursday as they return to Citi Field to face off against the Cardinals. But we will have plenty to discuss before then on tomorrow's show. I'll break down whatever happens in game 2 of this series. I might dive into Juan Soto struggles a little bit, but hey, maybe he breaks out. I don't have to talk about them, and has a very big signature Juan Soto game to lead the Mets to potentially their 5th series victory in a row. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, check out MLB Game Time. This is going on throughout the season. MLB Game Time is your place to catch up on everything going on in Major League Baseball. Check out MLB Game Time on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.